over half. Once upon a time, there was a smart and brave young Pokemon trainer named Little Jim. Little Jim was just over halfway through her quest for all 8 gym badges of the Kanto region when she was struck a heavy blow. Arbitrary rules had dictated that she part from her most trusted partner and best friend, the Lady Squishy, prior to their last gym challenge. Nonetheless, Little Jim and her team persisted, and, through a combination of skill, determination, and the sheer overwhelming power of the dynamic dragon duo, Jen and Sally, she made it past the 5th gym leader, Technician Chloe. In her success, the gym took a lot out of our little hero. The loss of Squishy still weighed on her. What she and her team needed was a break, a small side adventure to galvanize them, and Little Jim had the perfect quest in mind. Little Jim's Big Side Adventure. Little Jim had heard stories, whispers, of a powerful Pokemon whom none but the most powerful and skilled trainers might tame. It had taken up residence in the old abandoned power plant which lay in the north of the region. This was the perfect quest, the perfect team-building exercise, and the perfect distraction for Little Jim. So it was decided. Little Jim hopped on Wilma, her trusty flying Wailmer, and flew north towards the entrance to Rock Tunnel. From the Pokemon Center there, Little Jim proceeded further north still until she arrived at a small river which blocked any further progress on foot. Fortunately, Little Jim was prepared and had long since mastered the skill of hitching a ride aboard the back of Voltron, her Claydol, who was useless in most other respects. Although the river itself was infested with wild Claydol, they were easily dealt with, and progress was swift. Before long, the power plant drew into sight, and with it, the next obstacle. A swimmer named Thomas, also a Pokemon trainer, had come to inspect the plant, intent on uncovering the secrets of the abandoned station himself. He was a talented trainer, probably with a few badges under his belt, and his team fought valiantly. But, after swimming the river, and in the face of Jim's team, fresh off the defeat of Technician Chloe, they were no match. Now the way was clear. Little Jim drew a deep breath and entered the power plant. As the room materialized around her, time seemed to stand still, and a male voice boomed out. "And it's a queen. Oh, that's handy. It means that we can catch 3 Pokemon in here?" Most children would be perturbed upon hearing such a declaration from nowhere, but Little Jim was used to it by now. The voice had been a near constant companion ever since the start of her journey, piping up whenever she entered somewhere new, and its suggestions were not to be unheeded. Look at the fate of poor Jenny. Instead, Little Jim took heart. She had not anticipated this. She had come here seeking adventure and training, not for a second hoping to be able to add to her swelling ranks of team members. But now she could, and she would. First, she encountered a wild Seedot. Despite the wild Pokemon displaying a rather foul mouth, Jim quickly added it to her team, and gave it the nickname Boo, after her species' fondness for surprising other Pokemon while pretending to be an acorn. Next, our hero came across a Feebas. This Pokemon, a native of the Hoenn region, had somehow found itself in the river, and then flopped all the way inside. Taking pity on the lost creature, Little Jim wasted no time in catching the poor thing, dubbing him Murray. Lastly, Jim found herself face to face with an adorable tiny fairy Pokemon. Knowing she had one capture left on this route, Little Jim was happy to have encountered such a cute little Pokemon to add to her squad. Without much fuss, the Cleffer was caught, and remembering vaguely a television show from her early childhood, Jim named her Lala. With that first task now completed, our hero set about exploring the power plant. The place was a mess. But in amongst the rubble and the waste and the abandoned generators, there was quite a lot of useful stuff left behind. Going by the age-old law of finders keepers, little Jim availed herself of whatever she could find. This was no simple task, however, as the rubble and narrow corridors created a labyrinth-like maze, full of wild Pokemon who, although not enough on their own to challenge a trainer like little Jim, they were able to frustrate and hinder her progress, especially the trickster Masquerain with its intimidate and conversion tactics, and the wild Tailo who had taken to dropping rubble on their opponents. Moreover, some Pokemon had even taken to disguising themselves as items lying around the place. A curious tactic. Perhaps they aimed to lure unsuspecting victims in, already weakened by their journey. If that were the case, they were not expecting the likes of our little Jim, and these Pokemon were dealt with summarily. After what seemed like 20 minutes of exploring the old plant, finally little Jim rounded a corner, and in front of her, a small room opened up. In the middle of the room stood a great Pokemon, vast in size, noble in stature. It was time. The true test of the power plant was about to begin.
Of course you did.
The battle was over almost as soon as it had begun. Little Jim was shell-shocked and barely able to register what had just happened. Leaving the plant through a side exit, she gently hopped on Wilma and flew back to Saffron City, where this adventure had begun. Gathering herself, she took stock of her team and noted how much they had grown. Especially Voltron, who had even evolved and might be useful. Together, they were stronger, and little Jim took heart. Perhaps the adventure had been worthwhile after all.